Welcome to this video that bears the very important question: is there something like a divine right in certain circumstances to terrorize people? Or is it true that no one and under no circumstances ever has the right to do so? Like it is said in the title of the video called "They have no right to do this to people," taken from the YouTube channel named A Call for an Uprising. First, let us take a short look inside the video to see what is being presented there.
This is A Call for an Uprising. Welcome to today's show. It is becoming closer and closer that this is going to become a mandatory thing. And there's been so much pushback from the people out there who are learning more and more and just questioning things because they're seeing such a rise and a normalization of such diseases like autism. So media outlets like NBC, CBS, they're all pushing these same types of pieces. NBC ran this a couple days ago, talking about how more and more people were going against it, and then obviously using deflection to try and convince people why they should. A state lawmaker from Haver Hill filed a bill that would remove the religious exemption for vaccinating school children. Now, this is obviously already going on in this country. It's going on in California, Maine. It's spreading, but this is going to be a state-to-state thing. A bill HD 4284 filed on Friday would strike the language about religious belief, allowing only medical exemptions. So you see, this is what they do. Little by little, they take away your rights, right? Your freedoms. And they twist it and they go, oh, man, these are the people who are responsible for all these people getting sick. Oh, we haven't seen an outbreak like this in 20 to 25 years. Now people can only see that things like this are all implemented for total control of society. The people could realize that there are people above controlling who want to control, keep the power, to enslave society. They don't want to believe any of that stuff because the propaganda is too thick on the television. Chase your dreams. It's free in America. We're the best. We're the best country, right? And then you see the rights getting taken away little by little, right? The pre-crime getting put in place. Thought police. Mandatory vaccinations where you can't even decide anymore based on your religion or your faith. They flip it and they know how to play off people's emotions, and they'll say irresponsible parents are doing this and their kids are getting sick and their kids are dying and their kids don't have a choice in this and it's not fair, and that's why we need Big Brother to step in and do what's right. That's how this is going to play out, and it's going to continue to play out across America. So just another law taking away our rights, forcing vaccinations on society. Welcome to America in 2019.
So, in a nutshell, the whole topic of the video is about this growing tendency in the United States to take away civil rights of people to choose for themselves whether parents want to vaccinate their children against measles or not. First, I need to make clear that this video presentation is not about to discuss the very important topic of vaccinations, but as I said in the beginning, we want to focus now on that very topic and question if there is something like a divine right which is handed over to worldly powers to terrorize people or not. But when it comes to the implementation of people being forced to get vaccinated, we do see the same push also over here in Europe right now. In this discussion, the heavy weight in argumentation is put now on the danger of a minority of children, which are for certain reasons, so they say, not in a physical condition of being vaccinated. And for those minority, they claim that the unvaccinated children would be the source of danger. The argument that vaccinated children would be in danger of the unvaccinated children is therefore not the pushing factor anymore, as it is otherwise being presented on that YouTube channel. We will see now a few slides of which texts are from the book Rulers of Evil from F. Tapasossi, where he dealt with Cain's mark and Christ's rod of iron. There it says, according to God, as given in Scripture, the purpose of law is to regulate evildoers. Here the Apostle Paul. We also know that law is made not for the righteous, but for lawbreakers and rebels, the ungodly and sinful, the unholy and irreligious, for those who kill their fathers or mothers, for murderers, for adulterers and perverts, for slave traders and liars and perjurers, and for whatever else is contrary to the sound doctrine that conforms to the glorious gospel of the blessed God. In other words, any behavior not conforming to the glorious gospel of God belongs to the law, which, obviously, from its subject matter, is a jurisdiction foreign to Jesus Christ. Scripture teaches us that the glorious gospel commands repenting of sinful lifestyles, loving neighbor as oneself, loving and blessing one's enemies, giving freely without thought of reward, forgiving debts and injuries, and preaching that whoever believes the evidence of Christ's life, death, and resurrection enters the royal family of God for all eternity. Not every personality is drawn to the glorious gospel, although Scripture tells us that everyone is asked to know it. For the protection of those drawn to the glorious gospel and for the management of those foreign to it, there exists the rule of law. Rule of law is the system by which authorities bearing canes, powers, and insignia of kingship rule the world. The rule of law is what Scripture calls a ministration of condemnation. The strength of the rule of law is sin. This is observable in how law is at its most vibrant when ferreting out, prosecuting, and punishing crime. Officials to the rule of law are called ministers of righteousness, whose end shall be according to their works. I take this to mean good works, good end, and bad works, bad end. As might be expected of a ministry appointed to Cain, who, Scripture tells us, was of that wicked one, the ministration of condemnation, the rule of law, belongs to Satan. It is a shocking thing to realize that, according to Scripture, world law is Satan's province. But surprisingly, Scripture also teaches that a certain degree of cordiality exists between God and Satan. The earliest Christians well understood Rome's indispensable satanic role in human affairs. In the legal process which Christ established for members of his church, the harshest sentence an offender could receive was abandonment to Caesarean authority. Writing about Hymenaeus and Alexander, whom I have handed over to Satan to be taught not to blaspheme, the Apostle Paul was not talking about committing unruly churchmen to some satanic cult, nor did he mean by the following counsel that the church at Corinth should engage in demonic incantations. In both cases, Paul was heeding Christ's commandment concerning brethren who rejected both the glorious gospel and the rule of law. Turn them over to the Caesarean criminal justice system for their own good and for the good of the church. Thus, the earliest Christians were keenly aware that Rome's purpose as the spiritual heir of Cain and the incarnation of the satanic spirit was, first, to teach the people of God not to blaspheme, second, to destroy the sinful nature thereby, and third, to save man's spirit from eternal damnation on Judgment Day. This violent, good working spirit is characterized at Psalm 2, verse 9, and again at Revelation 2, verse 27, as a rod of iron with which Christ rules nations and dashes them to pieces. The Judean political leaders, anticipating a Messiah who would overthrow Caesar, didn't understand that Rome was Christ's rod of iron. Because he would not dash Rome to pieces, they declared him an impostor, demanded his crucifixion, and gloated when he failed to come off the cross. They could not fathom his consenting to suffer under the violent justice of his own rod, nor could they foresee that he would use this same rod on September 8, year 70, in the person of the Roman general Titus, who captured their rebellious city, Jerusalem, and dashed it to pieces. Paul, whom his non-believing Israelite brethren continually mocked, persecuted, jailed, tortured, and hounded throughout his Mediterranean and Aegean ministry, understood the rod of iron. It was in his letter to the Romans that we find perhaps the most eloquent statement on the New World Order ever written. Everyone must submit himself to the governing authorities, for there is no authority except that which God has established. The authorities that exist have been established by God. Consequently, he who rebels against the authority is rebelling against what God has instituted, and those who do so will bring judgment on themselves. For rulers hold no terror for those who do right, but for those who do wrong. Do you want to be free from fear of the one in authority? Then do what is right, and he will commend you. For he is God's servant to do you good. But if you do wrong, be afraid, for he does not bear the sword for nothing. He is God's servant, an agent of wrath, to bring punishment on the wrongdoer. Since the epoch of Emperor Constantine, the Roman papacy fostered the concept that the ruler who terrorizes wrongdoers is necessarily a Christian. Roman Christianity's success at avenging evil has resulted in a world that severely mistrusts the Christian gospel. It's to Rome's advantage that governing bodies be rebelled against as tyrannical, for rebellion against tyrants is disobedience to the glorious gospel. Now, friends, according to these texts, no Christian is ever asked to rebel or to rise up against any governing bodies because they are fulfilling God's own purposes with fallen humanity. And what else do we see nowadays in the rise of a militant new world order than Christ's rod of iron over a planet in rebellion against the government of heaven, which in ancient times was ruling over idolatrous Israel during the earthly ministry of Jesus Christ, and which will eventually fully dominate this planet for a short period of time right before the second coming of Christ in the clouds of heaven. So whenever you hear any professing Christians telling you to rise up against earthly kingdoms and rulerships, you might be aware that those, while professing in doing the work of Christ, are actually doing that of Satan. Real Christians are to be peacemakers while being surrounded by rebellious humanity. May God help us to be or to become such. Maranatha.